I grew up in Kennedy Township, and that's the Montour School District. From Montour, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I graduated from the university in 1987 with a degree in nonfiction English writing, film theory, American Sign Language for the deaf, and a little minor in modern British American poetry. And when I was 7 years old, I read Charlotte's Web, and if you know the story of Charlotte's Web, it's about a spider who writes messages in her spider web to save the life of her piglet friend. And at the very end of the story, when Charlotte passes away, Wilbur recollects that he loved her children and grandchildren dearly, but none of the new spiders ever took his place, Charlotte's place in his heart. And the line is, it's not often that someone comes along who's a true friend and a good writer, and Charlotte was both. And at 7 years old, I closed that book and I thought, true friend, good writer. I could aim for that. And I asked my dad to drive me up to the drugstore, and we bought my tablet, and I started a journal, and I've had a journal every day since then. I looked for an internship in television, and I started at KDKA. And I knew within the first week, this was how I like to tell stories. I like to tell stories not just with the words, but with the pictures and with the music and with the editing. And I was really fortunate that KDKA hired me before the end of my internship. So that's where I started in television. When I was 26 years old, the day after my 26th birthday, in fact, I went to a normal doctor appointment, a little routine doctor appointment, and explained a few minor aches and pains, and it turned out that they were caused by an 8-pound tumor on my ovary, and I had ovarian cancer. And that changed everything for me, because I also was supposed to start a new job in Los Angeles as the assistant to a head of a movie studio. This was going to be my big moment out of Pittsburgh. I had worked at KDKA and WTAE, but I was going to make the big move out. And I was supposed to leave in 3 weeks, move to Los Angeles, and all of a sudden I found out I had cancer. So that changed. I stayed here. I told them I couldn't take the job. And very miraculously, through the grace of God, another job opened up, and I started within a month at WQED. And I worked there for the next 6.5 years, but that cancer kept coming back every time. I'd have an operation, a year later, another tumor would grow right where they cut it off. I was never in danger of dying. The kind of cancer I had was persistent, but it just knocked my world apart, because sooner or later I knew that I wasn't going to be able to have kids. That seemed to be what this cancer meant for me. And ultimately, it meant I couldn't give birth to kids, but it's what ended, the reason I ended up adopting. And what I got were the 2 children I was supposed to have all along. So in hindsight, that cancer was a straight line to the family I was supposed to have, although at the time, it certainly didn't seem that way. For me, highlight is really more of people I've met. Even if it wasn't a story that won an award, it was this opportunity to be in this tiny little town in the San Fernando Valley and see this family mathematics program they had that not only helped the kids learn mathematics, but helped the parents learn English. That was a highlight. It was a privilege to be there, to meet people and have them trust you to tell their story. The most difficult part of a career for me is dealing with the anxiety of what you see. And it's become harder and harder the older I get, and especially since I've had children, to see the number of things that could go wrong. You see, and I'm not being facetious, you see the worst that human beings can do to each other. You see how random bad luck is. You see what a ruthless bitch Mother Nature could be. You see all of this trauma, and you see people just trying to move on or through it. And the older I get, the harder it is to build that shell of a journalist around you and not think, man, that's depressing. Early on, the first time I submitted something to be considered, it didn't get nominated, and I was crushed. And I was in my early 20s, and it was crappy. But I was crushed because I thought that was the recognition of great work. And, it's a recognition of work from your peers that is really important, because people in the know liked what you did, Then when I went on, I got nominated, and when I won the first time, I was just over the moon. You know, I remember being in the hotel room staring at that Emmy Award on the dresser right next to my suitcase thinking, how did that get here? And then I got to the point where I'd been nominated a number of times. I mean, I've been nominated a number of times. I won about half of those times. And what I finally come to realize is I love to be nominated, and I love to win. And I still walk past my bookshelf at home that has a bunch of Emmy Awards and Telly Awards on it, and you think, how did they get here? But what I found out is when you don't win, it's not that bad. I got into education by accident. I've been a television producer for 26 years. And around 2005, a former colleague of mine from KDKA was working at Point Park University as the broadcaster in residence, Jan Getz. And she called me and asked if I was interested in teaching a copywriting class here, because copywriting is where I started in television. I did promotions, I did commercials. And I thought, sure, that sounds fun. Even though I was working 60 hours a week as a television producer, I thought, why not? I'll give it a try. Because I had done writing workshops before in high schools, and I thought, let's see if I could do this for more than just one day or one workshop. And I really liked it. For me, I was looking at what I was seeing on the air, what journalism had become in this age of a 24-hour news cycle, and I thought, I don't like that. And I all of a sudden realized, but I'm teaching people. I do have that capacity to fix it. I really started to see teaching as becoming mission-driven. You know, if I want journalism to remain the cornerstone of a free society, if I want us to be the watchdogs, if I want us to be informing the electorate, then it's my mission to make sure that anybody who goes through my class understands that responsibility. And if they're going to go out there and do it, then they're going to have the skills to do it with integrity. So I really started to teach more and more, and then I even went back to get my master's degree from Kent State University, and my master's degree is in journalism education. So my master's for journalism educators really is part of my mission to make myself more of an advocate for good journalism. It morphed when I saw people responding to that sort of in-your-face teaching technique. It really morphed into broadcast boot camp. And I can't do it enough. Not just because it's entertaining. It's performance art. It really is. I am brusque, but I turn it up. I dial it up in a classroom. Because in the real world, it's not about doing this job. It's about doing this job under pressure. If you're a journalist, you're not sitting in a neat little cubicle. You are in the midst of a crisis. You are there on set because it was newsworthy, and usually it's newsworthy because of an extreme reason. And sometimes the extreme reason is extreme joy. More often, it's extreme trauma. And if you can't handle me in a classroom with this sort of fake pressure, you can't do this job responsibly in the real world. So a lot of my teaching techniques are performance art, but they don't feel like performance art in the classroom. Even if I tell students, you know, this is fake. This is just me putting a little artificial pressure on you to help you learn these skills. It feels real. And I'm glad, because it will either teach people to do the job under pressure, or it will teach people they can't do this job under pressure and they'll change their major. And I got to tell you, either one's fine with me. If you're not prepared to do this job, if I scare you in a classroom, you can't do the job out in the field. I think the most important thing I want my students to understand is the job matters, because we are the cornerstone of a free society, because we do inform the electorate, you know, for a number of reasons. But most importantly, because journalism is the first draft of history. A journalist said that in the 1980s, but it's true. What we observe accurately, objectively, and then write down and disseminate for other people is the first draft of history. We get it right or we get it wrong. And if we get it right, we've done history a service. If we get it wrong, the dominoes fall from there. Who's going to get it right to correct that? And so it really is as mission-driven for me in a classroom as it is mission-driven for me as a TV producer. There's got to be an understanding that what we do matters. It's not just fun. If you do it right, it matters.